Hey guys, so here bringing you another video and a welcome to a Challenger Spectate. Don't do these as much anymore, but people do seem to enjoy them when I do them, because obviously watching the best players, you can get a lot of value from that. And what I would say is in the comment section below straight away, if there's a specific role, champion, or even player, especially on EU West, that you'd want me to watch, feel free to leave it in the comments and I'll maybe try to do that in the next week or so. But yeah, today we're watching Nidalee jungle. Now the reason for it, obviously I have been spamming top lane for, the last few weeks. And, without being funny, we have gone from, when I was playing a bit more mid, I was like Diamond 4, but I've not enjoyed mid for a long time. I don't think mid's been that powerful. And then I kind of said, and people may remember going, right, I'm going to go play top lane, and I'm going to go play what I consider like broken champs. And we went from Diamond 4, basically, all the way to over 200 LP Master. So it's gotten very well, but I can feel myself needing to do other things, and I can just feel it. Me playing the dedicated top lane for the last few weeks, it's been good, but it's just not me to kind of be just on one role. And I don't see myself going back to mid lane, if I'm completely honest, and I don't really want to play bot lane because you are relying on other people, so that basically leaves jungle. So we're going to watch a Nidalee today, because Nidalee has always been one of the best solo queue junglers in League if you play it effectively and you play it to what she's supposed to do. Now, what is Nidalee supposed to do? She's supposed to be very high aggro in the early game. She kind of does fall off in terms of her absolute power and scaling potential, but her early game prowess, or fighting, invading, her mobility, even her clear speed, is always been one of the best in solo queue. But the thing is, she is a somewhat hard champion to pull off. But here's straight away, look how much. So I excuse to say, I presume this is a G2 player. I don't follow pro player anymore, really, so I don't 100% know if G2 Skewmond is the current jungler in G2. Let me know in the comments if they are. But yeah, you can see the maximizing of clear speed. A lot of it is they're not just finishing the camp and just taking their time. They are maximizing kiting away as it's nearly dying, just before a reset time, quickly AoEing the Krug the little rocks. And that's kind of how you get the major movement speed. Now, hilariously, first blood just happened. You might, oh my god, Nidalee got an assist. Yeah, she threw a heal onto her mid laner as she was crossing over, because why wouldn't you? You're helping your mid laner, you're healing them, you're also giving attack speed, and if that, Akshan goes all in, you ended up getting a free assist on first blood. Now, Mr. Hecarim, what I also liked about this matchup is it's a Nidalee, who obviously is always known as one of the highest and quickest junglers in solo queue, against one of the other ones. Hecarim is always in the contention of one of the best solo queue junglers as well. His speed is basically unmatched. His clear speed is very good. His early game power, especially if he goes back and gets an early Sheen. Okay, the heal kept them alive, and now Jhin has done an overstay. So Nidalee early committing flash. Now some people will go, whoa, early commit flash. Flash is not that actual important to a Nidalee because of her innate mobility. So where a Nidalee will see that as, I'm using flash to get his flash, she probably knew he has his flash up, so it kind of just negates it, and she has the mobility just to completely stay with him. If she left it longer, then Jhin would have got a little bit more to safety and then used flash probably to get to his tower, where they didn't give the option. Now, Alistair already roaming to top lane level 2. Obviously, that doesn't really happen as much anymore. Riot is trying to slow down support roaming. But obviously, and a thing that I've always spoken about, is when a player base gets used to a type of play, it's going to take a very long time for people to get out of that mindset. And we've seen that in top lane. Last year, it was all about split pushing, and that's all top lane was. Well, now it's not. It still has, there are still strengths to split pushing, but it's nowhere near as strong. They've nerfed tower plates, they've buffed towers, they've done early game changes and all that stuff to towers. So it's not as default like it was last year, but there are still top laners that is all they want to do. And the exact same is going to be happening in the support role of a few months ago. Supports were just roaming. That was the whole meta, was just roaming. But now Riot has nerfed it a bit away, but supports are going to take what, you know, players don't immediately adjust. They're going to be like, no, I enjoyed that roaming arc of supports. I'm going to keep doing that. And that's why you see a level 2 Alistair in top lane. So it is worth mentioning. Again, I've said for a very long time, I don't think mages have been in a very good spot for a long time, especially seeing this last mage update. It doesn't make, again, still doesn't make any sense to me. You're nerfing Leandries, you're buffing burst items when you literally cannot play burst, you know? And if Riot changed the meta, sure. But, you know, I saw a Reddit post the other day of a guy going, I have not played League in years. Why is everyone walking around with 4,000 health? And it's like part of the reason of that was obviously the buff, the durability update. Oh, hello, Hecarim. The durability update is partially for that. Oh, nice. Nidalee goes for the spear, is going to help get the kill. Alice is going to try his best to get away. Akshan coming in for a big roam. Obviously, Akshan is innately a roaming mid laner. But yeah, part of it is the durability update, and obviously none of us, I don't think, want to go back to complete one-shot meta, because that had its own problems. But I do think there's this kind of weird balance at the moment that maybe there's just too much health going around. And when there's so much health going around, you simply cannot play complete burst. And, you know, proof is in the pudding. I know this is just one game as an example, but this is a challenger level game. No mages in mid lane. I really think people are just kind of not enjoying mages in mid, because they are, in essence, harder to pull off than other classes. Why would you play a mage when you can just play a Corki or an Akshan? Alistair used heal to try and make that happen in terms of saving. Hecarim's actually doing some jungle farm. This could give him level 6, so they do have to be a bit careful. And Leona misses at E. Ezreal's back on the way, and that hopefully is going to be another kill for Miss Nidalee. The scuttles will be coming up soon, but overall that's a really nice play. So yeah, little skirmishes of roaming support still happens, and it should. Like that's more, let's say, modern League. But the default of only roaming, like a few months ago, yeah, that should be more or less gone. Like, realistically, an Alistair level 2 gank in top lane, yeah, that shouldn't really happen anymore. It's still going to happen a bit, but it shouldn't happen as much. Where obviously Riot is still encouraging roaming and stuff to happen is obviously when these spawn, the grubs, that's fine, and that's what Riot is fine with, you know. But they obviously have reduced it from 6 grubs, 2 sets of 3. There's now only 1 set of 3. So in Riot's mind, they're kind of okay with, right, there's this major time, both supports will go over there. It's only 1 time now, not 2. That's kind of the idea. So Nidalee goes back, buys a Lich Bane. So very big power spike, pretty early game for that. Akshan is now laning a bot lane. You might be asking why. If I'm honest, I don't really know. Aurora's having an absolute nightmare of a game, but obviously she did get level 2 ganked. I think she also got Hecarim ganked pretty early on. So she's had a quite rough time of it. Now, the benefit I would say about this game is these grubs normally have pretty high priority. If you look at both comps, there's not an insane split pusher on either comp. There's not a Trundle or a Set or a Yorick. Like, neither team has really gone for that. And I'm guessing because you have basically 480 carries in the game, both top laners went, okay, I'll go something AP, so we do at least have that arc of damage. You know, if you don't have that arc of damage, it can feel pretty rough. So a little bit of a dive going on. Jhin then ends up dead, Alistair ends up dead, double kill Mr. Akshan. And what you should always try and do, and I've always said, if something bad is happening another side of the map, so for example, oh, Hecarim is getting all 3 scuttles, then you need to try and achieve something the other side of the map. Whether that be a dive, because you know you'll have number advantage, or you do dragon. Always try to make something positive happen for your team, even when something negative is happening. And that a lot of time you can watch that in pro play all the time. You know, if you watch a really good team like SKT, they do have players that die, but the moment that someone dies, usually it's never to 1v1s, because at that level of play, it's rare that 1v1 kills happen. So usually you're being outnumbered to die. Well, that means you'll have number advantage somewhere else. So Nidalee obviously is getting the dragon. Hecarim did show in top lane, so she knows that's an uncontested dragon. The Aurora, I think, does need to be a little bit careful. Because obviously 0-5, only 40 farm at 10 minutes is not great. And again, makes it very clear, because I think sometimes it does get a bit lost this is a challenger level game. And some people go, oh my god, how are they only 40 farm at 10 minutes, 0-5? I do better than that. And that's where some people get a bit, you know, I think, confused, is this is a challenger level game. So the Aurora is a very fantastic, good player, but this is challenger versus challenger. If you transported this Aurora to master or diamond, they'd destroy everybody and would actually have a really good game. But when it's challenger versus challenger, it can almost make everything look normal, because basically the skill is being equalized and everyone doesn't look as impressive because everybody is impressive. And I think that does happen sometimes, is it, you know, when you're watching streams or you're watching you know, content creators or videos, it's very ill. Give me a second, Maya's barking. Okay, sorry, I'm back. Hopefully she'll be fine. Anyway, but yeah, like I was saying, I think basically if you take a bad example of a game, nice little pick, very nice pick on the Hecarim there. If you take an example of someone doing not great in a high rating game, that doesn't mean they're bad. Obviously, if they're in high rating, they've got on there, they're clearly good, but it can almost, you know, the moment that a player is in a very high pinnacle rank and they're against other players of a high pinnacle rank, it can sometimes just look a bit normal. But yeah, so dive happening again. Nidalee's going to end up getting the kill. Tower gets the Leona, and Corki eventually roams. So obviously Corki has not been prioritizing roaming as much as the Axe can, and that's about normal. You know, Corki, he can roam, but he's not by default a good roaming champ. So Ezreal going to do his best to survive, doesn't. Corki's damage is very good in the early game, but instant revives Ezreal. You know, yes, he died. He'd prefer he didn't, but he instantly gets back into the game. So when it comes to tempo, they're not really losing much. Magi purchase from Nidalee. So that is, again, worth mentioning. I typically don't buy Magi's. You know, is it a good item? It is. It genuinely is a good item. It can be cost effective, I believe, at around 9 stacks. Wow, Hecarim gets killed going for some counter jungling. So again, counter jungling is very powerful because you're doing a few things. You're enabling yourself to get your smite quicker. You're also slowing down the enemy jungler, because if you're taking camps directly away from them and they don't invade you, you are slowing down how quickly their smite can get upgraded. So that's where counter jungling is very, very good nowadays, but it's very risky. And obviously with Hecarim's, the funny thing with the champion is, by design, he is supposed to be somewhat of a bruiser, and they do kind of eventually get there, but they start with such a squishy build. Yumu's first item, you know, sometimes they might go Spear of Shojin's second item. So where at the moment it's quite a high health meta, Hecarim's quite often are like the squishiest champ in the game. And obviously, it goes without saying, it's a very high risk champion. Like any champion that, in essence, Hecarim does nothing if he doesn't go in himself. Like, he does nothing. He has no, you know, ranged power or anything. So if you're having a bad game on something like a Hecarim, you can't play any different. You still have to go into the enemy, you know, otherwise you're just running away. Same with like a Rengar. If a Rengar has a bad game, sure, he can throw his bowler, his E, but it doesn't do anything. He has to go into the enemy. So if you're having a good game, you'll end up one-shotting everybody. If you're having a bad game, you still have to jump into the enemy team, but instead of one-shotting them, you're having a bad game, you're behind, well, then suddenly you just get killed. So that's where the risk comes in if you are playing these all-in, basically only all-in champions, is it does add a very high level of risk. So Nidalee will have a high level of confidence. You know, she is 6-0, 10 stacks of Magi's. As I said earlier, prioritizing invading, taking away camps is very good. Oh, Hecarim, man. And he gets himself killed at the end. So yeah, this is actually becoming a bit of a clean sweep. But it's because they're working really well together. They're coordinating invades at the right time. The enemy team is being caught a little bit sleeping. You know, the Alistar, I would say, sacrificed his early game a bit too much. Again, the level 2 gank, oh yeah, he killed the Aurora, but it did hurt his XP. It did hurt his tempo in bot lane. The Jhin has suffered for how little the Alistar prioritized lane in early game. And look at the difference in bot lane. The Jhin is, what, 40, 50 farm down at 14 minutes. And that's not really the Jin's fault. You simply cannot lane 2v1. It's impossible. And especially on something like Jhin. Ezreal is better at doing it because he has mobility, survivability. You can't really get dove. Jhin has been dove a few times this game because it's Jhin. His only mobility is flash. And that's obviously what was an argument way back when that is innate, you know, Jin's weakness is lack of mobility. And when we used to have mythic items, we had a item that gave mobility, Gale Force, it gave a dash. And that's where a lot of people were like, well, these mythics are strong, they're interesting, but they are in essence giving mechanics to champions that they shouldn't really have. Because suddenly that mechanic of Jin has no mobility, he had mobility. So it kind of circumnavigated the weaknesses of champion design, and that's why mythics never worked. You know, there were items that gave stealth to non-stealth champions, you know? So big fight happening. Rumble coming down, uses flash, doesn't actually end up getting a kill on Leona. I think he might have overheated potentially. Enemy team is such on the back foot. And yeah, this is the strength of, well, it's the strength of the team in general doing well, but when a Nidalee does well, it can snowball like this. And this is an example of a Nidalee playing really good. High tempo, good levels of farm, invading at correct opportunities, landing spears, you know, it has to be said. She's landed a decent amount of spears this game, and if you notice how the Nidalee's playing, if the Leona is around, the Nidalee's just not throwing a spear. She's letting the Leona get a stun, then she'll throw the spear because you're guaranteeing it. Why risk it when if a Leona is nearby, she can basically guarantee it to land. If she lands a Q stun, Nidalee throws a spear, thank you very much. So basically just very smart level of play. You know, the enemy team comp, the Rumble is doing well. Nidalee is on the back foot here. It does just use flash again, as I said earlier. There are some champions in League, you know, that they need to hold on to their flash as much as possible. They can't just throw it randomly. Like an Annie needs to hold on to it because that flash tib is so important. But an Nidalee, you can just throw it anytime you really want. It's not that important. Boom, lovely spear. Not really sure what the Hecarim is doing, to be honest. He doesn't have Ghost, he doesn't have ult. Bit over aggressive, you could say. But yeah, so overall going very well. Enemy team, you might be like, what the hell are they doing? They're going for weird invades. This is desperation. So basically when you're so far behind, in especially a challenger level game, most challenger level games are determined by this point already, so you either may as well surrender, or you basically go for a Hail Mary play to try and catch the enemy team off guard, and sometimes that can get you back into the game completely. And that's probably what that play was. It was, right, let's go for this weird invade. We might catch a Nidalee, we might catch somebody, then that gives us number advantage, and then we can go from there. But obviously, it didn't work. And honestly, it didn't work because the red team was actually fairly grouped. They don't have, and this is a team comp thing, there's not a grand split pusher on either team. So if I was in this game, I would always expect red team to be about. I'd always expect blue team to be about, because it's not, again, like you've got that Trundle or Yorick that's always going to be bot side split pushing away from everybody in the game. There's no split pusher in this game. So I would always expect, if you see one, there's probably more than one around. So Jin gets caught, no mobility, not really sure what he's doing. Aurora, obviously, you know, there are games that you are the carry, and there are games that you are the sidekick. This Aurora, with how it's been gone, she was focused a fair amount in the early game. She is the sidekick this game, and you know what? That's fine. Everybody has those games. If you refuse to have those type of games, and there are players like that, there are players that refuse to be basically carried in any way, they only want to carry, they actually end up losing games more for their team than, you know, basically winning. Corki trying to escape. Nidalee's got a pet Corki. Again, just kill him. Again, he actually got 3 minions there. Obviously, at this point, they are very ahead, so you might say it doesn't really matter, and maybe it doesn't. But yeah. So overall, this has been a very good example of Nidalee. Also worth mentioning, so this is after obviously the nerf to Leandre. It went from 70 ability power to 60. Nidalee is getting its second item, yes, because we are still fundamentally in a health meta. That's the weird thing that I've explained a few times with these mage changes. That cool, they're changing mages, burst is king, but they've done nothing about the actual meta. It is still a health meta. You can't go pure burst and expect to do well, when a lot of people in the game will be, you know, even in their casual build in mid to late game, an AD carry will be walking around with 3,000 health. You can't burst that realistically, so having a percentage health damage item is basically needed. Right, Alistar ultimates early, obviously does make him very tanky. Aurora coming in with her ultimate. Alistair boots the Nidalee. She is taking a lot of damage here. It doesn't go down yet. Corki's going to go for the kill. Does get the kill. And you might be like, oh, is that worth? It is technically worth, kinda. Nidalee's instantly back, but you deny Medjai's, you get a massive shutdown. So if that individual death for a Corki, it's definitely worth it. Was it worth for an Alistair and a Rumble to die as well? No. But for the Corki, he would have been fine with himself dying in that situation. And that's something I would say as a player I've also learnt more about in the, like, let's say last year, is when I saw people dying for tier 2s, I was like, what are they doing? They're dying. I think some deaths, obviously I've always said, some deaths are worth more than others. And if you don't have a champion bounty, and you're going to try and kill a tier 2 tower alone, and you do die for it, but you manage to get it, 9 times out of 10, it is worth the death, because you are making double what the enemy team is making. It gets you, you know, more pressure. That tower doesn't respawn. You get 700 odd gold for killing it. There are deaths that are simply just worth doing. So there, that Corki, that one was definitely worth doing. They're losing the game anyway, but you are hurting the Nidalee. So I did say the Hecarim build, Spirit Shojin, second item. There is a thing I would say, that when you're having a bad game, very often buying tanky stuff doesn't actually help. Because if you're having a bad game, you're never going to get tanky enough to survive damage. So actually just going full damage is very often the way to go if you are behind. So yeah. Alright, so pressure obviously with Spear, sorry, not Spear, pressure with Rift Herald. Enemy team may, someone on the enemy team may just fully commit to going for this, because it's, again, that tier 2 is a lot of gold, but it's also a bounty. That's a map bounty, so the Corki is looking to commit for it. Also, if that's when the Corki was born, 2009, Jesus Christ, sorry, Aurora TPing to this tower, Adakan being done by the Nidalee and the Akshan, and yes, Akshan can just do that the entire time, and he does do it quite fast. So yeah, that's just cool design, I guess. I don't mind Akshan as a champion. I still don't love the revive mechanic. I think there should be limits on it. I think it's a little bit too wild that he can just in essence revive everybody in theory. I think it should be limited, but yeah, it's where I've always said to everybody, you know, every single champion in theory when they are designed, you know, if you take 100% bar, every single champion has divvies up of where their power goes in theory. So Nidalee, a lot of her power is in her Q. You know, most people would know a lot of her power is in her Q, in her spear, and her Q in cap form. So like 40% of Nidalee is probably all in that Q, and then the rest of the 60% is divided in the other areas. And some, you know, her W in the trap isn't great. That's like, you know, 5% of her power. The heal with the attack speed might be 10% of her power. Akshan, it does kind of feel, he's not a weak champion per se in himself, but it does feel like a lot of the champion in terms of his power is just simply that he can revive other people, and it's very powerful. But if they limited the revive, made it actually weaker, it would mean you actually could make the champion of Akshan stronger, because so much of his power is definitely tied to the revive. Alright, so enemy team, Nidalee missing a few spears, and that's kind of the whole thing of the champion. Alistair going for a re-engage, Hecarim going for an engage as well. So they managed to kill a Leona, but that was a 3v5, I think, in the end. Ooh, Rumble going crazy all in, and again, this is sometimes what we say, a bit of a Hail Mary play. High risk, high reward, but also high risk, bad reward. And yeah, they pushed it a little bit too much. Obviously, it's worth knowing in top lane as well, the Rumble has gone Ignite because he was trying to win lane. So the Aurora, who did get focused quite a lot, had TP, less lane pressure, less lane prio. The Rumble had ganks, even from an Alistair and a Hecarim, and had Ignite. So no wonder the Aurora had a bad game, but that, I believe, is going to be the end of the game. So incredibly good Nidalee performance, very high tempo, but also this was actually quite a good to show, you know, you can coordinate quite well in SOLOQ. Obviously Hecarim has left the game very often in high rating. I don't know why people do it. but you might see Doublelift doing it. They never let their screen get to this point, the victory or defeat. They end the game before. And I do definitely think for some people it's a mental thing of not getting too hyped if you win, not seeing victory, and not getting too down if you see defeat. They alt F4 before, and by the way, you won't get punished if you do it just before the game is done. So yeah, I don't really see the need to do it, but I think some people do it to keep themselves more level. But anyway, that's going to be it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, do throw a like on it, throw a comment, throw a subscribe. I'll be back on the main account tomorrow, which again, tomorrow is Monday. And hopefully this upcoming week, we can get some more main account. I'm going to prioritize the main account in this week because last week, Monday, I had a really good day on the main account. Thursday, Friday, I had a less good day on the main account. But yeah, I had some unfortunately bad tummy issues with some new medication I was on. So that, you know, my tummy has still not been great, but my body is getting used to the medication. So I think tomorrow I'll be fine to be on the main account again. But anyway, that's going to be it. Like, comment, subscribe. See you guys next time. Peace.
Welcome to the Rift, where the legends play. It's Aussie games bringing skill every day. From tips to tricks and play so fine. You'll learn the game and have a good time. Thanks for watching, you're the real MVP. Hit that like and sub, join the family tree. Like, comment and subscribe. Keep the Aussie dream alive. Tune in on Twitch, it's the place to be. Aussie games live, come hang with me. So hit that bell, don't miss a thing. Thanks for the love you're making me.